Hey, after reading Elliot, the Soldier's Fugue, one thing that I found particularly interesting was they named all of their scenes either a fugue or a prelude. So they would have prelude after prelude after prelude after prelude, which is kind of interesting since prelude is normally leading up to something. If you're leading up to another prelude, just an interesting choice of word. As for the two values represented in the play, one such would be war is pain, represented by Pop. He won't talk about his experiences in war, and we learn from the letters that he was wounded and hurt, and generally did not enjoy, and thought war was painful. Threw away his father's flute. He would only talk about the happier moments where he's got wounded and met his future wife, and the happy stories that he ends up telling Elliot. Elliot, on the other hand, shows a different value system, that war is war, war is just a fact of life. Even when he got wounded, he talks about it as a matter of factly. He's still in pain, obviously, but it's more of a pain of fact than something that could be avoided. He ends up going back to war, going back to that pain. It's a matter of fact that war is just the way it is. One thing that I've looked up was the Puerto Rican divisions in Korea, because they said something about the Koreans. Puerto Ricans being separated into different divisions for Korea. I couldn't actually find anything. It was like a racial segregation kind of thing. But in the Korean War, that there was one unit, the 65th, that was entirely made up of Puerto Rican soldiers and served very adamantly throughout both Korean, Vietnam, and World War I, until they were finally incorporated into the main military, which I thought was very interesting. As for the way that this play shows the American soldier, it shows a typical thing, like soldiers being hurt in war and stuff like that. So I won't go into that. But really, I think the way it challenges and perpetuates one thing is like the macho silence of Pop. He won't talk about the war. He's silent, no emotion. Even he's the only emotion he shows is being really pissed at his son for joining. As for Elliot, he cries when he's hurt. It's a much more softer emotional approach to a soldier. As for why is it called a Soldier's Fugue? Well, when I looked up Soldier Fugue, it was a short melody introduced and taken up by many people in a chorus. So kind of alludes to the fact that joining the military and going to war is multiple generations, and they're all fighting in their own wars and their own battles, but it's the same repetitive motion. Both Pop and Elliot were both wounded in the leg. They both ended up falling in love with their nurses. One of them even married, and it's the same thing over and over again. It's just a repetition of the same old beat. And as for questions I had, do you think that this story structure adds anything or takes anything away? And why do you think they included Pop? He didn't really do anything other than to provide that third generation. It's just, I found it a weird choice to include him.